Stand at a dock sometime and watch a cruise ship pull slowly away. Actually watch it in person, not a photo or a quick clip scrolling past on a screen. Look straight up at a wall of steel rising 20 decks above the waterline, carrying thousands of people, swimming pools, theaters, restaurants, and heavy equipment stacked floor after floor toward the sky above the water. From where you're standing on solid ground, the whole thing looks dangerously top-heavy, like a skyscraper somebody tipped sideways and floated out to sea on a whim, defying every instinct you have about balance. So why doesn't a single hard wave just push that entire towering structure sideways and roll the whole thing completely over into the water below? Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. Why it floats at all. Push any solid object into water and the water pushes back against it, upward, with a force equal to the weight of whatever water got shoved out of the way in the process. A cruise ship's hull isn't a solid block of steel sitting in the water. It's a hollow shell instead, and that hollow shape displaces an enormous volume of water, far more than the steel forming the hull alone would ever weigh on its own. When the upward push from that displaced water matches the ship's total weight pressing down against it, the ship simply stops sinking any further and settles calmly at the surface. That much explains why a steel ship floats at all. It says nothing yet about why it stays upright once a wave hits it broadside. The ship that never left the harbor. It did not begin with a modern cruise ship at all. It began with a Swedish warship that never made it out of its own harbor, sinking almost within sight of the crowd that gathered eagerly to watch it leave. In August of 1628, the Vasa set sail on its maiden voyage in Stockholm, a heavily armed vessel loaded with dozens of bronze cannons mounted high across two separate gun decks, richly decorated from bow to stern to show off royal wealth and naval power to the entire world. Weeks earlier, a rough stability test had already revealed the problem lurking underneath all that decoration. Sailors ran back and forth across the upper deck to make the ship rock side to side, and it rocked so alarmingly that the officer overseeing the test called it off early, genuinely worried the ship might capsize right there at the dock before anyone else even boarded. The Vasa sailed anyway, despite everything that stability test had already shown the people responsible for the ship. A light gust of wind, barely strong enough to notice on land that particular afternoon, caught its sails less than a mile into the voyage. The ship heeled sharply to one side without warning. Water poured through open gun ports sitting low along the hull, and within a matter of minutes, an enormous, expensive warship rolled completely over and sank in full view of the crowd that had gathered along the shore to watch it depart in triumph. The cause wasn't a design flaw in the hull's basic shape or a weak spot somewhere in the wood construction. It was weight sitting too high above the waterline, with nowhere near enough heavy ballast down low in the hull to properly counter it. That specific lesson never really left naval architecture afterward, echoing forward through centuries of ship design that followed. Every heavy system on a modern ship, the engines, the fuel tanks, the ballast water carried specifically for this purpose, gets placed as low in the hull as the overall design allows, as close to the keel as engineers can manage. The visible decks stacked above the waterline look like where all the weight must obviously be concentrated. Most of that visible structure is actually open space, cabins, and comparatively light material, while the genuinely heavy components sit hidden below the surface, doing quiet work. The force that moves. So if the heaviest parts already sit low in the hull where the Vasa's designers never put them, what actually happens the moment a wave pushes a modern ship over onto its side? Picture the ship beginning to lean, just slightly, as a wave pushes against its side. As it tilts, one side of the hull sinks slightly deeper into the water, while the opposite side lifts slightly clear of it, rising just a bit above where it normally sits. That shift changes the exact shape of the underwater volume the hull is displacing at that moment, even though the ship's total weight hasn't changed at all during the whole process. The point where all that upward water pressure effectively concentrates, which engineers call the center of buoyancy, moves toward the side that's now sitting deeper in the water. Meanwhile, the ship's actual weight keeps pulling straight down through its center of gravity, a fixed point that barely shifts at all during a normal roll like this one. With the upward push now landing to one side, and the downward pull still landing roughly in the middle of the hull, those two forces stop lining up directly on top of each other the way they do when the ship sits level. That misalignment creates a turning force, what engineers call a restoring moment, that actively rotates the hull back toward level again. It works something like a weighted toy that always rights itself no matter how hard you knock it over on a table. Push it and it tips sharply to one side. Let go, and something inside pulls it back upright again almost immediately, not because the toy actively resists being pushed in the first place, but because tipping it shifts internal forces into a position that actively wants to return to level. A cruise ship does something quite similar every time a wave pushes against it, except the shifting part isn't a weight bolted permanently inside a toy. It's the shape of the hull itself changing beneath the surface with every single degree of lean, constantly relocating exactly where that upward force gets applied moment to moment. Necessary, not sufficient. It's tempting to treat a low center of gravity as the finish line, as though getting that single number right automatically solves everything the hull needs to handle during a real roll. A ship's hull shape still has to actually let that buoyant force shift far enough as the vessel leans, which depends heavily on how wide and deep the hull is built, not simply on where the heavy components sit. A narrow, tall hull can have its center of gravity placed reasonably low and still generate a fairly weak restoring moment, simply because there isn't enough width for the underwater shape to change much as the ship tilts. Getting the weight low was always necessary. It was never sufficient alone, which is exactly the gap the Vasa fell into. It's also easy to assume the fin-shaped stabilizers visible on the sides of modern cruise ships are the actual reason these vessels don't capsize, since they're the most obviously engineered piece of anti-rolling technology anyone can spot from the dock. Stabilizer fins mainly exist to smooth out uncomfortable rocking for passengers walking around or trying to sleep, adjusting slightly as the ship moves to counteract minor rolling motion. The underlying stability that keeps a cruise ship from actually rolling over comes entirely from the hull's shape and where the heavy weight sits inside it, the same physics the Vasa never had working in its favor. Turn the stabilizer fins off entirely, and a well-designed hull still won't capsize under ordinary conditions. It'll just roll noticeably less smoothly. Where the real work happens. Back at the office, late into the evening, a naval architect spends months running a proposed hull design through detailed stability calculations on a screen, checking exactly how far the ship can heel at every possible loading condition before that restoring force finally starts to weaken instead of continuing to strengthen as intended. Deep inside the hull during early construction on a cold morning, a shipyard crew lowers a massive diesel engine into position, carefully placing it as close to the keel as the overall layout physically allows, months before a single passenger cabin gets built anywhere above it on the decks that will eventually rise overhead toward the sky. During a stretch of genuinely rough weather far from any port one night, an officer standing watch on the bridge checks a real-time stability readout, fully aware that the stabilizer fins are smoothing the ride for nervous passengers resting below, while the actual safety margin depends entirely on decisions made years earlier during the original design process at a shipyard. After a completed voyage, a ship inspector reviews cargo and fuel loading records carefully back at the port office, checking line by line that nothing shifted unexpectedly or got distributed in a way that could push the vessel's real-world stability outside the specific limits its original design was actually calculated for by naval architects long before it ever left dry dock. Hidden below the waterline. A cruise ship doesn't stay upright because the ocean has somehow stopped pushing against it every time a wave rolls through on an ordinary crossing. It stays upright because every single time it tilts even slightly, the shape of the hull beneath the surface changes just enough to shove that upward force sideways, creating exactly the turning motion needed to pull the ship back toward level again on its own. The towering structure visible from the dock isn't really where the ship's actual stability comes from at all. Whatever the view from shore that day might genuinely suggest to an onlooker, it's hiding below the waterline instead, in a carefully balanced shape and weight distribution that nobody watching from shore will ever actually see or think to ask about. If this changed the way you look at a cruise ship pulling slowly out of port, let us know in the comments below what you want us to explore next in a future video. We might make it our next episode. Thanks for watching. History often hides in the smallest details.